Today, we're going to walk you the 3 simple but not necessarily easy steps that you must take to solve any tax problem that you are facing. If you watch until the end, we'll provide you with one important tip that will really carry you through your tax resolution journey. The very first step in solving your tax problem is to conduct a thorough investigation into your issue and truly understand what is your mission. This might sound simple, but can get complicated very quickly. You have to begin by referencing and really studying any IRS notices that you have received. Normally, in the top right corner, there will be a letter ID number starting with CP. This will also help you decipher what you are looking at it. Now, where's a good place to start? By really reading and truly understanding what the IRS is asking you to do. For example, are you being audited? The IRS also use the term examined instead of audit, but they mean the same thing. Is the IRS notifying you of impending collection activity? Or perhaps you have received an infamous CP 2000 notice. This is a sort of mini audit that can turn into a full audit if not addressed appropriately. Or perhaps they are even sending you notices to file a tax return if you have not done so already. Unfortunately, there are so many variables involved at the investigation phase, so it's tough to give clear guidance on what you may encounter. But once you understand your mission, you can supplement your understanding with IRS publications and the actual text of the Internal Revenue Code, which are all freely available online. Bonus tip: this is something that will be covered in more detail in our later videos, but suffice to say for now that even though the IRS letters often tell you to reference IRS publications are not legally definitive guidance on tax topics. How crazy is that? Even though the IRS asks you to use them for help, they cannot be cited as authoritative references in tax court, if it came to that, but this is rare for most taxpayers' situations. The next step in your resolution journey is the compliance stage. Once you have an understanding of your problem, in many cases you will have some filings to catch up on. In most cases, before the IRS will continue with further resolution activity, they will insist you complete the filings. For example, the most common taxpayer form required to be filed is the Basic Form 1040 Annual Income Tax Return. Suffice to say that it is illegal to not file this form in any year that you are required to file it, and the IRS expects timely filings. However, various policies have advanced over time under which the IRS will normally not search for tax returns that needed to be filed more than 6 years in the past. To understand more about this, visit Part 4 of the Internal Revenue Manual. What's that? Well, if you can believe it, the IRS actually posts its employee manual freely online, although with some redactions, and you can use this to understand what you will encounter when dealing with any particular IRS issue. Using this info and the facts and circumstances of your case, you will have to decide how many prior year tax returns you will need to file. A common question you may have is, what if I don't have any records to file my tax returns? That's a great question. In most cases, you may call the IRS and request this keyword, your wage and income transcript. With this info, you will be able to see what information has been reported on your IRS account by entities such as your employers, stockbrokers, and retirement account administrators. This info can then be used to create and file your tax returns. The third and final step in your tax resolution journey is pursuit of some curing mechanism for your balance due, if there is one. For example, after filing 6 years of prior year tax returns, your results may show that you now owe a combined amount of $75,000 in tax, penalties, and interest. Even though that may be the case, don't panic. There are a number of ways this can be resolved. First, it's always going to be worth your while to investigate the possibility of penalty abatement. Take a look at Part 21 of the Internal Revenue Manual to see if you qualify. Here's a bonus tip. You can seek penalty abatement even if you have already paid the penalty. Next, you have to consider your options for dealing with a balance due. If the combination of your expense-adjusted yearly income and total assets are comparable to or significantly below the tax debt owed, you may be a candidate for the program known as Offer in Compromise. This is the program you hear advertised on the radio all of the time, making claims such as, "You can settle your tax debt for pennies on the dollar." While this may be true in some cases, nationally significantly less than half of offers in compromise are accepted, either due to not being qualified or perhaps not structured in a viable way. Bonus tip: It becomes harder to get an offer in compromise accepted once your first is rejected, so it may be beneficial to work with a tax resolution professional on the first attempt to improve your odds as much as possible. Additionally, the offer in compromise is a somewhat confusing term because it has nothing to do with what we think of as normal compromises, such as when you buy or sell something. The buyer offers $25,000, the seller wants $75,000, and then they meet in the middle. This is not at all what the IRS offer in compromise is like. It instead focuses on your ability to pay compared to the balance due. If you end up showing the IRS that you can fully pay before the statute of limitations expires, then they will reject your offer and expect full payment. So, does this mean you are out of luck if you don't pursue an offer in compromise? Not at all. There remain a few collection alternatives to you, such as a long-term installment agreement. What is the secret ingredient when it comes to solving your tax problem? The number one ingredient is patience. When it comes to dealing with the IRS, you have to understand that this agency is very understaffed and without common customer service features such as instant email confirmation that we have come to take for granted in the marketplace. This is not the IRS's fault. The agency has been severely underfunded for various political reasons. So, even though you may not get feedback for months or even years with the IRS, you have to remain confident that you are on the right. And that is why getting on the right path from the beginning is so important compared to doing things quickly. If you get off on the wrong foot, it could cost you years of time that might end up putting you back at square one. For more tips and tricks on solving your IRS problem, visit our website below www.shieldtaxresolution.com for our free report that can help you even further.